In this video, we are going to be taking an in-depth look at the supply chain of producing wheat in order to make Dempster's 100% whole wheat bagels. Wheat is one of the most recognized crops around the world and is commonly consumed by both people and animals. The most common varieties of wheat include spring wheat, used to make breads, durum wheat, used to make pasta, and club wheat, used to make cakes and pastries. Wheat can also be used to make everyday products such as alcohol, starch, and dextrose. In Canada, wheat is mostly produced in the Prairie region or breadbasket of Canada, as this area has a favorable climate and fertile soils for growing cereal crops. In fact, according to Statistics Canada, Canada produced 32.3 million tons of wheat, making Canada a leading exporter in 2019. The majority of the wheat that is grown in Canada is processed and milled into flour. For this reason, Dempster's is able to source their wheat directly from Canadian farmers. There are four major varieties of wheat grown in Ontario. These include hard red winter wheat, soft red winter wheat, hard red spring wheat, soft white winter wheat. Each variety has different properties and thus different purposes in flour and the final baked product. Our specific supply chain analysis examines how bagels are made and thus requires hard red spring wheat. Hard red spring wheat is the only variety of wheat to be planted in the spring in Ontario. All the other varieties are planted in the fall. They grow over the winter and are harvested in the spring. In wheat classification, hard or soft refers to the protein content. Hard red spring wheat has the highest protein, that protein being gluten, content of all the varieties grown in Ontario. It is this quality that makes hard red the most suitable choice for the flour that is processed into bagels, pizza dough, hearty breads, and artisan baking. Throughout Ontario, OMAFRA recorded 95,000 acres of spring wheat in 2019. The county harvesting the most acres is the Timiskaming district in Northern Ontario, harvesting 15,916 acres. Compared to winter wheat, however, farms across Ontario harvested over 650,000 acres in 2019, a much larger amount. Because of this difference in supply, spring wheat usually lands a higher price than winter wheat. But obviously, because they are planted on opposite ends of the year, the weather is often a barrier between good and great yields. A wet spring could be detrimental to the spring wheat crop after the winter wheat has already been harvested. Over the last 6 years, the average price of spring wheat is $6.28 per bushel, and the winter wheat has been $6.34 per bushel. Obviously, because of the significant difference in number of acres harvested, there was an equally significant drop in the total farm value from winter wheat to spring wheat. Like any crop, seed quality is king, and there are a few options for wheat producers. One being to save a bit of your crop and keep for seed, or two, buy certified seed. Planting bin-run seed risks the possibility of more weeds and more disease, germination rates may dwindle, and the potential need for more seed to be planted. However, of course, proper steps to cleaning seeds may be simple and effective on any given operation, and thus more profitable than buying new seed from certified seed dealer such as Pioneer, C&M Seeds, and CCAN. According to the Agronomy Guide for Field Crops by OMAFRA, it is almost never too early to seed spring wheat, although avoiding excess wetness is ideal. Obviously, this is after the ground has been free of frost, and here in southern Ontario, it is recommended for approximately April 10th. Like any crop, it's ideal to harvest at full maturity, and depending on weather and rain, that was approximately the middle of August for spring wheat. Popular cover crops over the winter after harvest include red clover, oats, and sunflowers, depending on your rotation system. Common pests in spring wheat are fusarium blight, leaf spots, rusts, and aphids. These can be combated by a variety of pesticides and integrated pest management practices that also can be accessed in the Agronomy Field Guide for Field Crops by OMAFRA. The next step in the supply chain is trucking the wheat. The wheat moves from the combine harvester through the auger to a grain hopper trailer. On a large-scale operation, a transport truck will be used to truck the wheat to the grain elevator. This usually costs around 30 cents a bushel for 50 miles. Once the wheat arrives at the elevator, it is weighed, elevated, and dried in bins. It costs around 4 cents a bushel per month to store wheat here. Once sold, the wheat is then trucked again to a nearby flour milling facility. This is where the wheat is turned into flour, specifically for our supply chain analysis, whole wheat flour. This process is 7 steps long, which includes purifying, rolling, sifting, and screening the wheat into middlings, which resemble a coarse flour. The middlings then pass through a pair of large, smooth metal rollers until the desired grade of flour is reached. After the milling process, ingredients are added to the flour to enhance and enrich its properties. Some of the additives include azodicarbonamide, L-cysteine, ascorbic acid, calcium peroxide, glycerides, and sodium sterolactylate. Once these are added, the flour is ready to be bagged and shipped away. After the wheat has been milled, enhanced, and bagged, the next step in the supply chain is transporting the flour to the bakeries. The whole wheat flour in our supply chain is milled at the 2 P&H Milling Group facilities, one in Cambridge and the other in Acton, Ontario. The flour is transported then to 3 Dempster's bakeries located in Cambridge, Etobicoke, and Markham, Ontario. The mill would package their flour in gunny bags or polythene bags wrapped in cotton and would store the bags away from wet or oily type goods. When shipping flour, the bags must be transported in dry, clean, odorless containers with ventilation. Specialty trucks are available when it comes to shipping flour in bulk. After the flour is transported to the bakery, the next step in the food chain is baking the bagels. There is value added in this step as the flour is being transported to another location. As well, there are many more precautions taken to make sure the flour is transported properly. When the flour gets to the bakery, the next step in the supply chain is baking the bagels. The first step to producing bagels is mixing all the ingredients together. Flour is mixed with vegetable oil, salt, cornmeal, calcium propionate, fumaric acid, and malted barley to create the dough. Next, the dough is then placed through a divider that cuts the dough into the perfect size for bagels. The dough is then placed on a conveyor belt and is flattened into strips and curved into rings. Now that the bagels have been formed, they are placed on a tray and put in a proofer to rise for 90 minutes. Finally, the trays are placed on a conveyor belt and go through a steam oven for 13 minutes. The bagels are now ready for packaging. There is added value in this process as extra ingredients are added to the flour and turned into a product that is ready to be consumed. After the bagels have been baked, the next step in the supply chain is packing and shipping the bagels. When the bagels come out of the oven, they are cooled on a conveyor belt as they are brought to packaging. 6 bagels are then placed in each bag and are closed with a tie. The bags then go through a metal detector and are also weighed. The bags are then case packed and palletized, and these pallets are placed on transport trucks and distributed to grocery stores. There is a value added in this step as bagels are put into bags with preferred serving sizes, and the bagels are brought to stores where there is easy access for each consumer. After all of this growing, processing, packaging, Dempster's whole wheat bagels can finally reach the shelf. Wheat started out as not so much, but after processing, packaging, baking, Dempster's bagels can be purchased for around $3.99 a bag at many grocery stores, including Walmart, Metro, and No Frills. Bagels actually don't originate from New York City, as many people believe, but originate from Poland as far back as 1394. They come from the Jewish communities in Poland and didn't become a popular food until the mid-1970s when they were marketed as the Jewish English muffin. Before then, bagels were considered a niche market. In 1984, bagels were bought by Kraft Foods, the same time that they purchased the Philadelphia Cream Cheese Company. This marketing scheme was considered the wedding of the century. By the 1990s, bagels were a multi-billion-dollar industry. In Canada, nearly 290 billion bagels are served across the country each year. And even though bagels don't hit the low-carb list, they manage to make it into most people's diets, especially in New York City and Montreal, which are very well known for their bagel bakeries. So to recap, spring wheat is the ideal wheat for making bread. This is because of the hard variety of wheat that it is, which has a high gluten content. It is typically planted in April and harvested in August. Once harvested, the wheat is trucked to the grain elevator to be weighed, dried, and stored. Most of that wheat that was harvested will be milled into flour, and the wheat that was melted to flour happened by rolling, grinding, and adding necessary additives. Then it can be bagged. The bags of flour are transported to one of Dempster's bakeries, where it can be made into bagels using their recipe and industrial techniques. These bagels are then packed in bags of 6, wrapped up for transport to grocery stores across the country. Dempster's whole wheat bagels can be purchased at a large variety of grocery and convenience stores all across the province. Thank you.